I'm Daniel Goleman. I'm a psychologist by training, a journalist by trade. I'm best known for my work on emotional intelligence and related topics. I've been writing about these for many decades now. And I have dedicated my life to this because I feel that the skill, the ability to be intelligent about our emotions, to understand what we feel, why it matters, how other people feel, to use that in our relationships is absolutely essential for success in marriage, in life generally, in work, and for happiness.
Hello, Mr. Goleman.
Hello.
My name is Maria Luisa. I'm a mother of a 9-year-old wonderful girl, and it's such an honor to be here with you. It's such an honor to spend a little time with you, be able to ask you a couple of questions, and have you be part of this magnificent project that is Aprendemos Juntos. So thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you so much.
I'm very pleased that I could do it
Thank
on this
you.
quick visit.
Thank you. So can I start with the basics? Because probably most of the people who are going to watch this are parents just like me. Yeah. And they're not so familiar with what emotional intelligence entails. Yeah. So if we could get like a description from you, that would be so good.
Sure. Well, emotional intelligence has to do with your personal skills. It's not academic learning. It's how you handle yourself, how you handle your relationships. There are 4 parts. The first is self-awareness, knowing what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, how it determines, how it impacts what you can do well or not so well. Then managing yourself, being able to achieve your goals, to stay positive despite setbacks, to handle your disturbing emotions so they don't destroy your life or keep you from doing what you need to do. And then there's empathy, understanding how other people feel. People don't tell us in words, they tell us in tone of voice and nonverbal gestures and so on. So being able to pick that up, to understand another person's point of view, and then using that, knowing what's going on with the other person, to manage relationships well, to collaborate, to be a good team member, to settle conflicts, to influence people, persuade, communicate, to listen, all of those skills. So that's really what emotional intelligence is.
Okay. What does it mean to be intelligent about our emotions?
Well, that's exactly the essence of emotional intelligence. That's what the phrase actually refers to. First of all, I think it's important to realize that every emotion has its place. Every emotion is a message, an important message. The trouble begins when emotions become too strong or too out of place, inappropriate, or last too long. For example, if an 8-year-old girl is upset that her friends didn't invite her to the party, it's understandable that she's upset, but how long does it last? Is she still upset about it 2 days later, 2 weeks later? What about her mom? Is her mom, worried about this or that thing, that one thing? And that worry is, 2 in the morning, you wake up and that's out of place, it's too much. So being intelligent about emotions is, first of all, listening to emotions. What is this emotion telling me? And then also making sure that you can manage it if it's disturbing or intruding on other things you want to do. In other words, an emotion has its purpose, but then does it end? And can you go on to the next thing?
So this is really important for parents to know. And the big question is, can we teach emotional intelligence to our children? Can we reinforce their own emotional intelligence? How can we do this?
You've been doing it already. You did it from birth. The moment you pick up a baby and you help her stop crying, you soothe her, you're actually teaching her brain how to calm down from being upset. You're teaching emotional intelligence in everything you do with the child. And a brain of a child is constructed to watch people very carefully, to learn how to be a human being. So you can't help but teach emotional intelligence if you're a parent. Parents are the first coach, the first teacher.
Well, which brings me to an important thing that happens to me. which is I don't have the level of emotional self-control that I would like to have. So I'm trying to teach this to my daughter, but it's something that I have not mastered myself. So this makes a mess at home. How can we handle this?
I wouldn't give up, because in one capacity, you're a model for the child, and you feel you're not such a good model as you'd like to be. You may be better than you think, you don't know. But the other is that you can help your daughter learn to calm down, learn to manage her emotions by talking her through it. For example, oh, you're so upset right now, but why don't you do something you enjoy? That'll calm her down, you know, at a certain age. Or you're feeling very jealous of your friend, or you're feeling hurt that they didn't invite you to that party. But this is a feeling that's going to pass. In other words, you can give her lessons, help her understand more about her own emotional life, and also give her methods. So, you know, maybe take a few deep breaths. All of these things help. And from a parent, it's very powerful, because children want to learn from parents. So every time you make the attempt to help your child manage their emotions better, or empathize better, whatever it may be, you're actually helping them.
Super. So this brings me to schools, because what you're saying makes me think that schools would really benefit from social emotional learning. What is exactly social emotional learning, and what are the benefits in schools?
Well, social emotional learning takes the elements of emotional intelligence, self-awareness, self-management, empathy, relationship skills, and it adds also good decision-making, particularly social decisions. And it folds them into lessons for children that are appropriate to the age, so that, you know, for 7-year-olds, the emotional intelligence lesson, the social emotional learning lesson might be, let's imagine that you thought someone took your pencil. What would help and what would hurt? Well, hitting the kid wouldn't help. Asking might help. Asking the teacher to intervene. In other words, kids go through scenarios together and decide what's best. One of the things they do in some of these classes, on the front of the class, there's a poster. It's a stoplight, traffic light, red light, yellow light, green light, and says, when you're upset, remember the stoplight. Red light, stop, calm down, and think before you act. Well, that's wonderful. It teaches a child you can't control what you feel or when you're going to feel it or how strong. You can control what you do after you feel it. You can stop and pause. You can calm down, and you can think about, what would happen if I did this or that? In fact, the yellow light is think of a range of things you could do and what the consequence would be. Green light, pick the best one and try it out. In the schools with SEL, they do the stoplight at every age, so that even for older kids, like 16, 17, they're thinking about what the consequence would be, because this helps kids make better decisions in life. So the data is very extensive and very strong. It shows, for example, there was a study of about 750,000 students who had, half of whom had taken this, half had not. And it showed that for the kids who had SEL, as we call it, social emotional learning, they were better able to manage their emotions. They had fewer fights and arguments. They were more behaved in class. They paid better attention. They had fewer problems. And so those we call antisocial indicators, they all went down. The pro-social, the positive indicators went up. I love school. I feel someone at school really cares about me. I don't feel like missing class. I want to go to every class. Those went up 10%. The negative ones went down 10%. They went down more in schools where it was needed the most, where they had the most problems. And this is interesting. The academic achievement scores went up 11%. So it helps children learn better. Well, why is that? It's because of the way the brain is arranged. The part of the brain that learns is the prefrontal cortex and the neocortex at the top. But the part of the brain that has disturbing emotions is in between the ears, and the brain is arranged so that this part can take over that part if you're upset. And for children, what's most upsetting is what's happening at home and what's happening with other kids. But if you learn to manage that better, then you don't get disturbed so much. Every emotional disturbance is a distraction. You can't pay attention to what the teacher's saying or to what your book is telling you because you're thinking about that party they didn't invite me to, or whatever it may be. But if we help kids learn how to handle those melodramas of every child's life, then they can learn better. That's what the data is showing, and it's very strong.
And why isn't this in every school?
It's a global, worldwide movement. Singapore was the first country to make sure every student had social emotional learning. You know why? Singapore has no natural resources. It only has what's between the two ears of its citizens. And it wants its citizens to be best prepared to be good workers and good leaders and good creators. So they see the value of social emotional learning. In fact, I often talk to business groups and businesses. And if you ask people in business, are emotional intelligence skills necessary for success? The most seasoned people, the top executives, 70, 80% will say, oh, of course. Yeah. If you ask educators, they may not know that because they're taught that, your math and your language skills, which of course are important, is what's going to help you in life. The truth is, though, the data from the business world and the working world is that those are entry-level skills. Everybody has them. You need to have good math skills, of course. But what is going to make you a good team member? What's going to make you an outstanding performer? What's going to make you an excellent leader has nothing to do with what you learned in schools. The distinguishing abilities are in the emotional intelligence domain. Can you persuade? Can you manage yourself well? Can you empathize? Those are the skills that matter in the working world. So I feel that the school curriculum should reflect that, but teach these skills of future leadership, of future, being an effective worker, a good community citizen, a good husband, good wife, good parent. Teach those in school.
So there's a direct connection, as you're saying, between your emotional intelligence and your success in life and in your career, right?
The data there is very convincing. If you look at studies that companies themselves do to identify their most successful leaders, most successful team members, they find that what distinguishes those outstanding performers most is the emotional intelligence skill. It's not what they learned in school, it's not technical skill, it's not IQ. In fact, there was just a study I saw of engineers, and engineers rated each other on who's the most successful engineer. And then it turned out the correlation with success, as rated by other engineers, with IQ was 0, with emotional intelligence, very high.
So you're saying that IQ is less important than emotional intelligence?
Well, IQ is important. It matters a lot, particularly in school years. You'll get better grades, you'll learn better. And then in the early years of a career, but later in a career, as you are promoted to manager, for example, and you become a top executive, it doesn't matter so much. Yeah. Everybody, in order to be a top executive, you already have to have an IQ, technically it's called 1 standard deviation above the norm. The norm is 100. 1 standard deviation is around 114, 115. That also turns out to be what you need to get an advanced degree, MBA, master's degree. So that's very helpful. But once you're there, you're competing with people who are just as smart as you are. And so your IQ doesn't make much difference. In fact, I saw some data that after 120, there's no relationship between career success and IQ. 0. Wow. After IQ of 124 for leaders, negative. Interesting.
It's really interesting.
But what that doesn't say is that what matters is on the emotional intelligence side. That's what makes the difference.
So let's go back to kids and how they learn. It's widely said that kids need to make mistakes, that it's really important for them to make mistakes. Why are mistakes and frustration such an important part?
I would put it differently. I wouldn't say that the mistake and the frustration is the learning opportunity. I would say how a child handles the mistake and the frustration is what's important. Making mistakes, if you don't learn from it, it's not so helpful.
That's true.
However, one of the elements of career success and success in life is being able to bounce back from failure and setback. Life is full of setbacks and obstacles. But if you let that stop you and you don't keep trying, then you don't learn from the mistake. But if you manage to see that, oh, maybe there's a hidden opportunity in this situation, that I can, even if I'm really upset about this, I can handle my emotions and keep going. In other words, the people who achieve their goals are people who don't let obstacles and setbacks and frustration stop them.
Right.
They've learned how to keep going. I think that's the value for children.
That's right. And you mentioned something, and this is a specific skill that you always say that we have to reinforce in children. This is very interesting, which is focus.
Yes.
So what's the importance in focus, and how can we teach it?
Well, first of all, focus, or the ability to pay attention or to ignore distractions, to put your attention where you want it, and not to take out your phone and play a video game, not to text your best friend, not to go on Facebook or whatever the kids are doing these days with each other. That is a temptation. It's a seduction. I was listening to a fellow who was on the team that invented the first iPhone, and he said, we were all single in our 20s and engineers, and we tried to make it as seductive as we could. He said, now I have 2 kids, I really regret it. So it's very important that children be able to, particularly in today's world, which is full of tech distractions, everything, be able to put their attention where they want it, because attention is the basis of learning. Why don't we teach attentional skills in schools? Because the data shows that the more you can concentrate on a lesson, the better you'll learn. And there's a way to do it. I was in a classroom of 7-year-olds in a part of New York, which is very poor. It's called Spanish Harlem. And the kids there live in subsidized housing, and there's a lot of violence in those places. They have a very difficult childhood. And the class, I thought, would be pretty chaotic, reflecting but it wasn't. It was very calm and very focused. And I asked the teacher, what's going on, And she said, well, it's this. Every day we have something that we call belly buddies. Each child gets their favorite little stuffed animal. They find a place to lie down on a rug. They put it on their belly, and they watch it rise on the in-breath and fall on the out-breath, and rise on the in-breath and fall on the out-breath. That's basically attention training. It's mental fitness training. And as you get older, what you do is work with distractions, because the mind is always going to wander off. Sometimes this is called mindfulness. There's a big movement to have mindfulness in schools. When your attention wanders, you notice it wandered, and you bring it back.
Okay.
That is strengthening neural circuitry for concentration. Okay. Every time you notice that you're distracted and you bring it back to your focus, you're strengthening the circuitry for full attention. It's just like going to the gym. Okay. Every time you lift a weight, every repetition makes that muscle that much stronger. Every time a child or an adult brings attention back, you strengthen the circuitry for doing the same thing. This is teachable. The brain actually wants to learn to pay attention. It's a preliminary for learning of any kind. So attention can be trained. Attention is the basis of learning. Therefore, schools should teach attention training.
And what about meditation? How is this? Is it linked somehow? Does it help?
Well, a meditation is a more generic term. Mindfulness is an adaptation of some very classical meditation methods. I just did a book on the science of meditation, looking at the academic scientific studies. And what we find is that mindfulness and every other kind of attention training, I prefer that term to meditation, makes attention stronger. By college age, if you do mindfulness, it turns out you get better exam results on the graduate school entrance exam. You get better score. So, if you care about your kids, you would want them to have this skill.
Yeah, so this is something that definitely is really interesting to teach kids, and especially this is something that should be taught at school too.
What you're teaching is known in science as cognitive control.
Okay.
This means the ability to put your attention where you want it and to ignore the distraction. It turns out the same circuitry for cognitive control helps you manage upsetting emotions. The brain uses the same circuit for this. Okay. So That mindfulness, the 7-year-old belly buddies, that's teaching cognitive control. One of the most famous tests of cognitive control is called the marshmallow test. And if you don't know it, you should, because it's done with 4-year-olds at Stanford University. And one by one, they come into the room, and a big, juicy marshmallow is sweet, dulce, I guess you say it in
Dulce,
Spanish.
yes.
Dulce, yeah. Is put in the table in front of the kid, and then the experimenter says, you can have it now if you want, but if you wait till I run an errand and come back, you can have 2. And then she leaves the room, and that poor kid is staring at that. What am I going to do? And about a third of them, grab it and eat it on the spot. A third wait and get 2.
Okay.
But when they're tracked down, when they're about to go to university, 14 years later, it turns out that the kids who waited compared to the kids who grabbed, who were impulsive, still can delay gratification in pursuit of their goals. That's exactly what it's a test of. They get along better with their friends. And on the college entrance exam, out of 1,600 total points, they had a 210-point advantage. In other words, they learned better.
Oh, wow.
And these were, by the way, all children from parents at Stanford, graduate students or faculty, so they're very high IQ families. But cognitive control, this was a study done in New Zealand. They looked at kids 4 to 8. They assessed cognitive control. They tracked them down in their 30s, and they found that cognitive control was predicted better financial success and better health in your 30s than IQ in childhood or the wealth of the family you grew up in. What this means is it's a way of helping poorer kids have a level playing field in life because they can manage themselves better.
That's right.
Why not teach it to every child?
Right. Can we talk about compassion? Because I watched your TED Talk.
Oh, yeah.
And it was really surprising because I tend to link compassion to charity or feeling bad for others. But you give it a different, you teach it a different way. So how would you describe it in your words, compassion?
Well, I think the most basic way to think about compassion is in terms of an exercise that was actually found in a study at the Max Planck Institute in Germany to increase the circuitry for compassion. The brain circuitry for compassion is one of 3 kinds of empathy. The first kind of empathy is cognitive empathy. I understand how you think. I see your perspective. This means I can communicate with you effectively. The second is emotional empathy. I know how you feel because I feel it too. And the third is empathic concern. Each of these uses a different part of the brain. Empathic concern, which is the basis of compassion, uses a parent's caretaking circuitry. It's a parent's love for a child. I think compassion is taking that same feeling that you have for your own child and applying it to anyone else. There's an exercise, as I mentioned, that enhances this circuitry, where you first think of someone who you're grateful to, who's been kind and helpful to you in life, maybe a parent or someone else, and you wish them that they be safe and happy and healthy and have a very good, full, fulfilled life. And then you wish it for yourself, and then for people you love, your children, your family, your friends, and then people you know, maybe people at work, people in the community. And then you extend it to everybody. And what you're extending is the wish that people have a happy, safe, fulfilled life. That's compassion. And it's expressed in many ways, given whatever the situation. It may be simply paying attention to people who need something that you can help them with in life that you know, or giving money to someone who's poor, or doing charitable work. That's the most obvious way, but I think there's an entire spectrum of compassion that goes from what we think of as charity to also even just paying full attention to someone is a kind of micro-compassion, being fully present.
So this is something that can be taught.
Oh, it's teachable and very doable, and we need more of it, I think.
Okay, so as a mother, of course, I'm interested in my daughter's success in life, but I'm even more interested in her happiness.
Yes.
So how is emotional intelligence linked with happiness? Are people who are more emotionally intelligent more happy?
By definition, actually, if you think about it, the ability to manage your negative emotions, your disturbing emotions, anger, fear, jealousy, is part of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
So I would say that people who are happy are emotionally intelligent, and also that emotional intelligence makes someone more likely to have happiness emerge in their life.
What do you think has been the impact of emotional intelligence in education in this last 30 years?
Well, when I wrote the book Emotional Intelligence a long time ago, it actually was an argument for emotional intelligence in schools and in parenting. And there are now manuals for emotionally intelligent parenting. I'm sure they're available in España. And as I say, many schools now around the world are using social emotional learning, which is emotional intelligence repackaged for children so that it's age appropriate, it covers the full spectrum, it's implemented well, teachers model it, that's very important too. And I had no idea when I wrote the book that this would happen, but it was my hope. So I'm very happy, thank you.
Is there any last suggestion, idea that you want to send to schools and parents?
Well, for parents, I'd say don't worry about what you're teaching your children. They also are very picky learners, and children find models in life.
Yeah.
Even children who don't have, an intact family can have very good models. And for schools, I would say if you want to really prepare children to learn well, you need to pay attention to how the brain operates, the role of emotion, and helping children be better able to manage the emotions they're getting in the way, and to facilitate the ones that help them learn.
So thank you so much, Mr. Goleman, for this time. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you so much.
It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria Luisa.
Thank you.